The Bible prophesies a peace agreement between the Israelis and Palestinians. The signing of this agreement will begin the final 7 years to Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus. Will this agreement be signed between now and the U.S. presidential elections on November the 3rd? We'll discuss the probabilities on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are in interesting territory right now. Here we are just 3 months away from a very critical presidential election, which will occur on November the 3rd of this year of 2020. But it's not only interesting because of a presidential election. We're talking about world-changing, history-changing events that are coming at us just like they're coming right over the hill at us. Today I want to talk to you about the peace plan. As I mentioned in our open, the Bible does prophesy there's a peace agreement coming, and once it is signed, it will begin the final 7 years to the second coming of Jesus Christ to this earth. It is one of the only prophecies we have that has a timeline attached to it. That's what makes it so important. We've had this prophecy for 2,500 years. However, it appears we are on the brink of its fulfillment right now. What has set this in motion? President Trump announced that he was putting together a peace plan for the Middle East between the Palestinians and the Israelis. The Bible teaches that this peace plan must deal with the future of the nation of Israel. Trump released his plan on January the 28th. Now, immediately people begin to look at the provisions of the plan. We've gone through it before on this program. There are 5 specific things in the prophecies about this plan. All 5 of those things are addressed in the Trump peace plan. If they come to pass, ladies and gentlemen, you and I will enter the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ. Once Trump's plan was released on January the 28th of 2020, Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, had promised repeatedly over the last 3 election campaigns that he would annex the West Bank settlements and the Jordan Valley. Trump's plan provides for Israel to annex the West Bank settlements and the Jordan Valley. Now, the problem was when the Trump plan was released, Israel did not have a government. They had had their 3rd election in about 11 months. They were attempting to put together a coalition between the conservatives and the liberals. They finally got that done on May the 17th. They put together a coalition between the Likud party headed by Benjamin Netanyahu and the Blue and White party headed by Benny Gantz. When they put this election together, Netanyahu insisted that he would, first of all, he would serve as the first prime minister. This was going to be a coalition agreement, so he would be prime minister for a year and a half. Then Benny Gantz would be prime minister for a year and a half. Netanyahu insisted that he would be the first prime minister. He also insisted that he would be able to hold a vote in the Israeli Knesset after July the 1st on the annexation of the settlements and also on the annexation of the Jordan Valley. Well, everybody was looking forward with great anticipation, especially those of us that understand this prophecy and all of its implications. We were looking forward to July the 1st. Well, July the 1st came and went. Nothing happened. And nothing has happened until today. And here we are, approaching the middle of August. Why? That's a question we all want to understand. Well, an article came out on August the 3rd from the Jerusalem Post. It was entitled, Netanyahu, Annexation Still on the Agenda. That's what everybody was waiting to hear. Here are a few excerpts from that article. Israel may still apply sovereignty to parts of Judea and Samaria. That's where the settlements are located. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a Likud faction meeting on Monday, it has not been taken off of the agenda. Netanyahu told Likud MKs the option still exists. While Netanyahu was addressing the annexation question with the members of his party, the Likud party, he said that the matter is currently in the Trump administration's hands. The Trump peace plan would allow Israel to apply its law to 30% of the West Bank, including all settlements and the Jordan Valley. The rest would be designated for an eventual Palestinian state, which would receive recognition and a massive aid package from the United States and the international community if it meets a list of preconditions, including demilitarization, stopping incitement, and stopping salaries for terrorists. Diplomatic sources in the U.S. and Israel have said that the COVID-19 pandemic has taken much of the government's time and energy, and that enacting the Trump peace plan is low on their agendas at this time. Now, it is true that there was a huge spike in the United States in the pandemic, as well as in Israel. So both Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump have been fighting against this, fighting for the life of their nation, actually, plus fighting for the life of their individual governments. However, Israelis that are involved in the matter of sovereignty have sought to push the sovereignty moves this summer ahead of the November presidential election in the United States. Why? Because they're afraid President Trump may not be reelected, and Joseph Biden has already come out against the annexation of the settlements and the enlargement of the nation of Israel. Now we want to look at a very interesting, insightful analysis. Why August, this month, is critical for West Bank annexation. This comes from the Jerusalem Post, the 4th of August, 2020. Israel is in a 20-day countdown to see if meaningful steps can be taken to annex portions of the West Bank. Unless a budget is passed by August the 25th, the country, according to its rules of procedure, will be forced to head to a fourth election. Now let's make sure we understand this. When there is a government in power, there is a deadline for them to set their budget for the next year. If they don't meet that deadline, their procedure says immediately the government falls and new elections will be declared. The moment the government falls, the entire issue of annexation in any meaningful way likely ends, unless U.S. President Donald Trump wins the November 3rd election. Should the Israeli government fall on August 25th, the entire future of annexation would hinge on a Trump win. Given that his opponent, presumptive Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, opposes the application of sovereignty to West Bank settlements. Let's consider another question. Could Netanyahu attempt to pass annexation now, in the next 20 days from the time of this recording, which is August the 5th? Netanyahu could. In fact, Yesha Council head David El-Hayani reminded Netanyahu publicly on Monday that he has the power to do so. Now, when we use the term Yesha, that stands for Yehuda Samaria. Yehuda is the Israeli word for Judah, so it stands for Judah Samaria. He's the head of that council, and so he is reminding Netanyahu that he has the power to annex right now without waiting on Trump or anybody else. Certainly Netanyahu has Knesset support should he choose to go that route. So the only way really that Netanyahu would move forward now is under pressure from Washington. It is for this reason that Netanyahu told the Likud faction on Monday that the issue of sovereignty is in Washington's hands. A directive from the White House to both Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, his co-ruler, that an annexation vote is necessary in August is likely the only way for Netanyahu to move forward without risking the government's collapse. For that to happen, Trump would have to perceive that this narrow window exists and to believe that sovereignty was so critical to his reelection that it must happen now. Should Netanyahu and Gantz manage to find a budget compromise, and should the government survive August, then the matter of annexation could roll into September. Now, we've all heard about an October surprise. Many presidential candidates have pulled something out of the hat at the last moment, just the month before the election, and many times it has swung the election in their favor. Could Trump have an October surprise up his sleeve? Could he have a deal between the Palestinians and the Israelis that would swing everything in his direction? Okay, so what all this means is that either way, the dead heat of an August Middle East summer will likely make its mark on the map of the West Bank and future annexation plans. Another article appeared in Israel National News just yesterday, August the 4th. It was entitled, "Green Light on Judea and Samaria is Key to Trump's Reelection." Okay, now this author believes that President Trump needs this peace plan to be implemented before the election. Here's what he had to say. President Trump's chances of winning another term in November could well turn on his publicly endorsing Israel's immediate implementation of his peace plan, restoring Jewish sovereignty in 30% of Judea and Samaria, which is also known as the West Bank, after an absence of 3,000 years. Are you hearing that? Israel has not possessed this land for 3,000 years, but now she's back. If she can declare sovereignty over it, it is going to have great impact on evangelical Christians in America and on Jews around the world. Republican voting Jews and white, born-again evangelical Christians, I'm not sure why they say white, because I think Christians of all color would say that, they are particularly interested in seeing Trump give Israel the go-ahead. It could be the tipping point in their decision to vote or not vote for President Trump. Fully 8 in 10 self-identified white, born-again evangelical Christians say they voted for Trump. That's a large percentage, while just 16% voted for Hillary Clinton. Trump's 65 percentage point margin of victory among voters in this group, which includes self-described Protestants as well as Catholics, Mormons, and others, matched or exceeded the victory margins of George W. Bush in 2004, John McCain in 2008, and Mitt Romney in 2012. Only 72% of white, born-again evangelical Christians currently approve of Trump's handling of his job, according to a Pew Research Center survey conducted June the 16th through the 22nd, a decline of 6 percentage points since April. Actioning his peace plan could see Trump's evangelical vote restored to its 2016 levels. Delaying its implementation could see evangelical support decline below 72%. However, this bipartisan support has been fractured following President Obama's post-election sellout of Israel at the United Nations on December the 23rd of 2016, followed now by stringent criticism of Trump's peace plan by Senators Elizabeth Warren, Chris Van Hollen, Chris Murphy, and independent Bernie Sanders. 191 Democratic members of Congress do not want the annexation plan to happen. The Democratic Party's draft 2020 platform, which proclaims Democrats oppose any unilateral steps by either side, including annexation, that undermine prospects for two states. Now let's pause just a moment to make sure you got all that. Traditionally in America, Jews have voted strong Democratic, like 78%, and only 22% would vote for the Republican Party. However, some of these late developments with the Democrats in their own platform being against the annexation, and also the actions of President Obama after already Hillary Clinton was defeated during his lame duck term, he supported a resolution stating that Israel's presence in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, was a flagrant violation of international law. We've talked about that on this program before. This is causing Jews to think long and hard about whether they're going to continue their loyalty to the Democratic Party or whether the time has come to shift. Now, we're talking about a faction here that could determine the winner of the presidential election come November the 3rd. The Democratic Party now opposes Israel unilaterally reconstituting the Jewish national home in Judea and Samaria, a legal entitlement vested in the Jewish people for the last 100 years, but unattainable until now under the Trump's peace plan. Now, the League of Nations said this should be theirs 100 years ago, but the political elements have not aligned themselves so this could be implemented until right now. I'm talking about possibly the next 3 months. Many Jews who voted for the Democratic Party in 2016 would be alarmed at seeing their previous bilateral comfort zone collapsing. The choice they thought they would never have to make has now arrived. Trump can help regain his high 2016 evangelical Christian vote while increasing his very low 2016 Jewish vote by green lighting Israel's immediate application of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, considerably boosting his prospects for re-election. Think about it. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, that brings us to a very important question. Where does the Bible prophesy Palestinian control of the West Bank, but yet Jewish settlements under Jewish control there? It's right in your Bible. It's in one of the most famous prophecy chapters in the entire Bible called the Olivet Discourse. It's found in Matthew 24, 15 through 21. Here's what Jesus said. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. That means on the Temple Mount. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea. Now Judea is the West Bank. That's what we're discussing today. Let the Jews which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Woe be unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For, why? Listen carefully. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. Now this prophecy was given 2,000 years ago by Jesus Christ himself. In 1967, there were no Jews in the West Bank. However, the 67 war changed everything, because from the 67 war until today, there now are 850,000 Jews living out there. They build homes, they have settlements, they have towns, they even have cities. Now, the entire international community says they can't stay, and yet everybody knows you're not going to uproot 850,000 Jews. You'll never get a peace agreement if that is what is required. Trump knows that. So he built into his peace plan a way for there still to be a Palestinian state in Judea, and yet the settlements that are out there, 30% of the West Bank, would be shifted to Israeli control. That's what he has proposed. You can read it for yourself. Go to whitehouse.gov. There you can see his peace plan. It's all laid out there, 110 pages. He's laid it out that there will be a Palestinian state there. He's actually got a map there showing the settlements intermingled with the Palestinian state. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to happen. Jesus prophesied about it, but he also said it will not end up well, because that will happen beginning the final 7 years, but halfway through the 7 years, something is going to trigger the Palestinian anger, and they're going to start making war against the Jews that are living in their midst. So what this provides for is, in fact, getting ready to happen. You will watch it happen. I can't tell you it'll be in the next 3 months. It may well be yet this month. I don't know. Or it could take a little longer. However it plays out, it's prophesied in your Bible, and you're walking right now through the halls of prophecy. To understand more of what I'm speaking of, I would encourage you to enroll in the Jerusalem Prophecy College. Simply go to JerusalemProphecyCollege.com. Register, enroll in your first course, and you'll understand thoroughly what's getting ready to happen just ahead.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at End Time will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. To taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank End Time for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
I will be taking your calls in this segment of our program. The number to call to be on the air with me, 877-END-TIME. That's 877-363-8463. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't mind telling you, when I think about the possibility of the greatest prophetic fulfillment in the last 2,000 years happening just ahead of us, possibly even yet this year, I am filled with anticipation and with amazement. So what are some of the things that are playing behind the scene right now? We know that part of the plan is that if Israel is going to annex these territories, this 30% of the West Bank, with full U.S. backing, and that's very important because the U.S. has veto power at the UN Security Council. So when the international community tries to come against Israel for doing this, the U.S. will be there with its veto stamp, stopping any action by the international community. So when we think about all of that happening and Israel being able to do this, we wonder, okay, what would stop them? Well, right now in Israel, there's a huge opposition against agreeing to the establishment of a Palestinian state on what is biblical promised land. The area of Judea, Samaria is part of the promised land that God promised to Abraham way back in Genesis chapter number 15, verse number 18. So Netanyahu, even though he helped construct this plan, he may not have anticipated the level of resistance for this plan. Furthermore, the Palestinians are sticking their heels in the sand, saying we want nothing to do with this plan or anything else that Donald Trump ever proposes. Well, could it be that Trump and the people that work in the State Department are quietly working through our Arab friends behind the scenes, talking to Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinians, and other influential people, saying, look, this is your chance. We're ready to put the deal together. You can have peace. The international community has promised you $50 billion to build up your economy. You'll have it better than you've ever had before. You'll have your state. You'll have a portion of East Jerusalem as your capital. All you have to do is to meet certain requirements. So could President Trump even trigger an entire deal between now and the election? Could he make an October surprise announcement ladies and gentlemen, we have a Middle East peace deal that no one has ever been able to do before. But we now have both the Palestinians and the Israelis in agreement. Israel is going to annex the settlements, but this territory, 70% of the West Bank, is now going to be assigned to the Palestinians. All they have to do is to agree to demilitarization. They will not be able to have an army. They'll be able to have a police force as necessary. But they cannot have an army that could threaten Israel's security. They'll have to quit paying terrorists the horrible program that's called pay to slay. They'll have to quit paying the terrorists. And also they'll have to do a few other things that we're going to require. But they're going to have their state, and Israel's going to have its security. And this is what they have been waiting for. So could that be happening? We don't know. Do you remember the Oslo Accords? Most of you would not possibly, but back then, back in 1993, when they announced the Oslo Accords, everyone was stunned because nobody thought we were near a peace agreement, and all of a sudden, within the next 5 days, Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin were standing on the White House lawn with Bill Clinton's arms wrapped behind each of their backs, pulling them together, announcing we have an agreement. Could such a scenario actually happen again? Well, there's no doubt that it in fact could happen again. Matter of fact, there's going to be a peace agreement. Exactly how quickly, I cannot promise you, but President Trump would love to do it. I've laid before you the reason why both Netanyahu and President Trump would like to get this done in the next 3 months. Now, please hear me clear. I am not predicting a peace agreement in the next 3 months. I can't do that. I can predict a peace agreement because the Bible specifically prophesies it. The prophecies always come to pass. So it's going to happen. The only question is when. But the reason I am so emphatic today is because if they do get this peace agreement in the next 3 months, you and I would enter the final 7 years to the physical return of Jesus Christ to this earth in the next 3 months. Now, make sure you hear me clear, because I know what happens when we make certain emphatic statements. People hear what they want to hear, and they run tell all their friends, hey, they're going to sign the peace agreement in 3 months. We'll enter the final 7 years in 3 months. No, I can't tell you that today. It is a possibility, and I've given you all of the elements as to why it could even be a probability. But it is coming, whether it's 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. Cannot tell you that for sure.